In this lesson, we are going to look at REST APIs. REST APIs are the major transport when it comes to any cloud services. There are different ways to access them, and there are different formats and ways things are done in the case of REST APIs. So REST APIs are not specific to AI or anything like that. It is very common with all the cloud services, irrespective of the cloud providers. In fact, it is used outside cloud as well. Now, without further introduction, let's get into the topic. So REST APIs. So before we get into the APIs itself, let me help you understand how the whole thing works in terms of cloud. This is nothing new to you if you have used any of the cloud resources already, because all the cloud resources are exposed via REST API. I don't want to discuss any other cloud resource in this particular training because it's very specific to artificial intelligence. So we are going to stick with REST APIs and AI services here. So in our case, in our demo, we have loaded a pretty big model into a very expensive GPU, like $3,000, $4,000. The entire setup is like $5,000, $6,000 setup. So the model is there, the 14 GB thing we have seen, the file, and it is loaded into a very expensive hardware. And it is just a non-data center hardware. It was just a desktop. We can't even keep that desktop in a data center. Even if it works, its end user license agreement doesn't. So the hardware is not supported, which means that if you want to have a setup like that, which you have done in the previous session, you need to have tens of thousands of dollars, which means the whole thing is super expensive. What we have seen so far in the demo, all this ChatGPT and things like that is super expensive. Now, what the cloud providers does is they host it in their hardware. So let me draw that in a blue. So this is the cloud, say for example, AWS or Azure. So they host and they share between users. So many users will be using similar models. The users can't see each other. They are completely isolated, but they will be using probably same model in different compute or shared compute and things like that. That way, the cost is minimized. And this blue arrow right here, so let me draw it in a slightly different color so that it is clear. So this blue arrow, I'm drawing it in orange right now. These are REST APIs, REST interface to use the model from outside. We are going to see a demo, the model we have seen before, the chatting model, the 5.3 we have exposed inside a 4090 RTX NVIDIA. We are going to expose that model using REST API. So once it is exposed via REST API, the advantage is a lot of people can use it. In fact, right now, once I host that REST API server for that model, which we have seen, which is there in the LM Studio, one of the tabs are Start Server we have seen. If you do that, a lot of clients can connect and use that model. A lot of people can use that model and simultaneously ask different questions. For example, what we are going to do is we're going to develop a Python application and use that model we have seen. Instead of the cloud provider, we'll be just hosting that locally just to see how it works. Before that, we will look into REST API. After that, we'll host a REST API for that model we have seen, and we'll call that REST API and chat with it using REST API with Python. By the way, this is Python if you're not able to understand. It's a snake right here. So that's what we are going to do, just to give you a heads up. And this blue line in the rest of the training will look at the different AI models. There will be different models which recognize images, convert text, find out profanity in text, speech, all kind of things. There are different models. We have seen different models in our LM Studio, which does slightly different things, but almost all of them are language models. We'll see also language models like ChatGPT, OpenAI services in the cloud. So basically, rest of the training is all about exploring different models which does different things for us and how to make it do things using programming and some other methods, mostly programming in Python. That's what we are going to do rest of the course. Now, being said that, let's try to understand more about this particular part, which is the REST API itself, what it is and how to call a REST API from Python. So let's get into the code and APIs completely out of context of AI, what we are going to do is we are going to access a random REST API. For example, getting the image of the latest galaxy NASA has found. NASA has a couple of REST APIs exposed. So let's see that completely out of context, and then we will come back to AI. You can simply search for NASA REST API. In fact, you can go for any APIs. There are so many REST APIs, but NASA REST APIs are typical example. So first time when you use the API, you need to generate an API key. You need to just give the first name, last name, and email. They will email the REST API key to your email. Pretty straightforward. Most of the APIs need keys to access, so I have generated one key myself. Make sure that you don't steal my key right here. It is my precious NASA API key. Unfortunately, there is no way to revoke this key, so this key may be valid even when you watch this training. So this is a key I got in my email from the NASA. So I trust you on that, and let's see what are the APIs we are having. So astronomy picture of the day. So that's what we are going to get. Before that, what is REST API? REST API is nothing but a URL just like this. So what happens when we copy and paste this URL right here? So what happened is right now, this particular URL, it delivered an HTML page to my browser. So let's see that HTML. So to see that HTML, go to inspect, and this is the HTML which I got when I accessed that URL. So how do I know that it is HTML? It is starting right here. It is HTML. And doc type is HTML. So HTML is nothing but a text file, simple text file, which the browser can render and show you this particular output. This is a bit of a complicated output. Let's go to google.com. So google.com. So now the google.com page has loaded. This is the HTML of google.com. Don't switch. So this is the HTML page of google.com. I got it by going through this URL. Basically what I have done is I have done a GET request to this particular URL. Now, I told you this is a HTML text file. It's a text file. It doesn't have to be HTML. It can be anything. I can get any type of file by this technique. Just that the protocol is HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Through that protocol, I can send any data. Normally, if you're sending HTML, it's a web page. And if you're sending something called JSON, we will see shortly, it is called a REST API. If this particular URL is returning a JSON formatted text file, it is normally a REST API. It is pretty similar in terms of content. It's just that the programs can read that file very easily. Right now, to parse the HTML, we need a lot of parsing to do. For example, I want to extract this particular text to Google search from this. I don't even know where it is. I need to search a lot to understand where is Google search in here. But I'm sure it's somewhere here. I don't even know. If I do an inspect, probably I may get it. But then the inspect is parsing the whole document. Now I can edit it and do, say, Anand search. But the point I'm trying to tell is this particular document right here is an HTML document, and it's very difficult to parse. Only with the help of a browser, which is a very complicated software, we can parse, and it's not very efficient. But if you're getting a different document in JSON format, which we are going to see, it's very easy to parse. They are very short, to the point, no styling and things like that. So let's see that. So what we are going to do is we are going to call an API from NASA. What that API does, that API does this. I don't know what it is, but you can read. Doesn't matter to us. It's giving some kind of picture of the day. So what is the API? API is this, and these are the parameters. Normally different parameters we need to pass to an API. So these are the different parameters. You can pass a date, start date, end date, count, thumbs, and a lot of different things we can pass. But we are not going to pass anything. What we are going to do is we are going to just execute this API right here. Instead of Google, I'm going to paste this. So in here, we need to paste our key. Where is our key? Our key is in this notepad. This is our key. Again, don't steal my key. It's my secret key. If I want to launch rocket in future, I'll be using NASA. I don't want to tell that one of my students stolen my key or something like that. So we got the output from NASA. So if you look at this output is slightly different from the output we have been seeing so far. The data is very different. It's a JSON file we got. And this is very easy to read from programs right now because it has a dictionary format. If you know Python, this is a dictionary in Python. Copy, write. Christopher Freeburn. I don't know who that is, but he has a copyright of this thing, whatever we are going to see. And this is that image, some very interesting image covering over 6 degrees of width, 12 full moons. Oh my god, so much magic in this particular image. Someone really worked hard to get it. So let's see that image. This is the image URL. So HD URL. So that is the URL of the image. Hopefully we will get that image from the URL. We'll see. We don't know. The title of this particular image is Messier 24 Sagittarius Star Cloud. Okay, I'm even curious to see that image, to be honest. That's our key, not the image. Control C, Control V. Let's see if you're getting it. Yeah, beautiful image with very high resolution. Again, this is just a JPEG file. It's not an HTML. Again, HTTP protocol. This time it is JPEG file. It's not even HTML. So we have accessed the API with our API key. We got the JSON. From the JSON, we got this particular location of the image, and we gone to the image, and this is the image. Very beautiful. You can read more about it. Probably when you access it, you may get a different image altogether, but I think this URL may still look the same. Now, why this format again? This format is very easy for applications to understand. This is a Python dictionary already. You can simply load that Python dictionary, very easily get this path and do other things with this image, displaying, doing pattern recognition, or anything we want. But in the other format, for example, this web page right here, it's HTML, very difficult to parse. So REST API is nothing but serving JSON over HTTP, simple as that. Now there is this GET request, there is POST request, different mechanism to pass the arguments. So these are the different arguments. For example, this is a GET request, so we can pass arguments as query parameters like we did here. So this is the format of query parameter. There's a question mark and then parameter name. So we will see as and when we learn different APIs. Most of them uses POST request because the key normally don't pass as part of the URL. One more thing I would like to show you before we go on. We can use this particular URL from any kind of HTTP client. For example, curl. Let's see curl. Python is no different. So we should get the same output. So this output looks slightly different, but it is exactly same. It's a JSON file. We can copy, save as JSON, and see the content of it, just like we have seen in browser. Now we have accessed it from curl, just another HTTP client like the browser. Now we can access it from Python if you want. We will be doing that throughout the training, so I'm not showing that anyway, but we will be accessing the model we have seen. That model we'll be seeing from Python and other kind of clients from the LM Studio. So coming back to this particular diagram before we go into our model. So we'll be sending HTTP GET requests to the cloud. Once the model is ready and kicking with the API key, most of the models will have an API key to access. And the charging will be per API call. Most of the models are charged per API. If you are not calling, it doesn't charge. And we can call from multiple clients if you want. APIs, GET requests, POST requests, and things like that. And we will be writing Python program. For example, we have done from curl. From web browser curl we have done. Then curl we have done. We have called the API from curl. Now we will see Python as well. Python, any programming languages which has a provision to call REST API you can use. So in our case, we'll be using Python rest of the training. Calling different models using REST API from Python is going to be the highlight of this training going forward. So what we are going to do next is we are going to host the model we have seen. In this case, I have selected the Llama 3 model in LM Studio. This is the same LM Studio you've been seeing to chat with the model. So in this case, I have selected a tab to start the server. This is a tab to start the server, the API server. So if I click this particular button, it'll start an API server and expose these API endpoints. So I can call these API endpoint, for example, v1/chat.completion, v1/embedding, v1/model. all these different endpoints it'll be exposing. So these are all OpenAI specific endpoints. So this is a OpenAI like model. That's why I'll be able to copy this code and execute it from Python, this particular code. Again, if you have a graphics card or not, try this demo, not hard at all. So all you need to do is to press the start server button right here after loading the model, just like we did before, and copy the code from here. For example, there's a curl example. We have seen curl, another HTTP. There's a curl example. There's a Python. And once you have the Python, you can move it to any other language these days. C#, JavaScript, Java, or anything you want. So the code is there already, and there is a system prompt and everything. So I'm just checking the CPU usage and GPU usage and things like that, just to see the status of the model, to make sure that the model is not overloading the system. I have started the server. Server is started right here. As you can see, I have highlighted these endpoints. So these are different URLs. So there's a GET request right here if you want to use. Then there are POST requests. POST request is mostly used. We'll be using mostly POST request. Pretty much more or less the same. Slight difference in the header. But otherwise, all the HTTP requests are kind of same. Get, post, delete. A couple of them are there. Not much difference. At least from our learning perspective, it doesn't make much difference. In fact, we won't be calling REST APIs directly. We'll get into that later. Let me finish this particular topic right now, and we will explain that later, why we won't be using REST APIs directly. But for the time being, the model has started and the REST APIs are ready. We can call and chat from any server. As long as I'm able to connect to this particular machine, I can call from any number of clients right now and chat with this machine simultaneously. So that's the part of it. Yeah, probably if there are too many clients, the server will be busy for sure and it'll take more time. But at the end of the day, the provision is to connect from multiple clients via REST API, and it is listening on this particular port, localhost 1234. That's a port which I can set here. Right now, it is listening on localhost, so I'm trying to access that. There's a couple of different things I'm doing here. Let me change all these things and copy the code. So this is the code I copied from the LM Studio. So this is the model which I'm trying to access, and the OpenAPI base URL. I'm using the OpenAPI library because the service is just like OpenAI. So there's a key is being passed. It's a fake key, LM Studio. It's not really a key because the model is running locally. So everything, I have copied the code from here to access the API. So the logs are served from here. So one of the things you can see here is that I'm not accessing the API directly from this code itself. If you look at this, is very common, and this is what we are going to see in all the cloud resources. So there is an SDK sitting in front. I'll draw a diagram, but let's finish this sample. Let's make sure that it works. So this is a code if you want to copy, but it's already there in LM Studio. REST API is ready. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start debugging, start running the whole thing. So it has started. It is generating text. That's what you are seeing in the screen right now. So the sample is working. It got the request and now it has finished. I don't even know what I've been asking the chatbot, but chatbot has said something. Nice to meet you. I'm a chatbot, so fine. Respond with rhymes that are truly divine. So we are asking it to do some kind of rhyme thingy. All right. So let's see what we got. So always answer in rhymes, introduce yourself. Okay, so that's what we have asked. Always answer in rhymes, introduce yourself. So it is introducing itself in terms of rhymes. If you want, you can try something else, but this is the response it has given. It is trying to do some rhyme thingy. Hopefully it'll make sense. Yeah, it says, nice to meet you. I'm a chatbot. So fine. Respond with rhyme that are truly divine. Yeah, it's writing some kind of poem. Let's write Donald Trump. So we are asking, who is Donald Trump? Always answer in rhyme. Let's see what it says. So again, going to start debugging. Let's see, can make rhyme out of Donald Trump. It is trying to make Donald Trump with a rhyme. He's a businessman, a celebrity too, with words that are bold. Wow, interesting. So this is the rhyme it has given about Donald Trump. It looks like it is some kind of poem which rhymes and all. Looks like it has done its job. But at the end of the day, what we have done is we have hosted the API, REST API, and then we have called it from Python. Now, one thing we are not clear is that if you are used to REST API calling from Python, this is not how you do it. So there is this request package and things like that. So let me explain that bit before we go on. How is the REST API getting called? Basically, we are passing the REST API right here in line number 5. We're passing the REST API to a SDK function right here. So there's an SDK function. So always there is an SDK in front of the REST API. So let's draw that diagram to make things clear. So if we look at this particular diagram, so this C model, it's the LM Studio in our case, LM Studio, and the model is exposed via REST API, and the REST API should be called from Python. Now, the SDK comes between the REST API and the Python program. So in this case, it was the Open API. There was a function called Open AI, not API. So this function we have seen, we are calling from the Python application in line number 5 and passing the REST API URL. So this is the REST API URL we are passing to the Open AI. And inside that function right here, we are calling the REST API. If you want, you can trace the network and see there are a lot of ways to trace the network API. In fact, it is there in the LM Studio console, which API is getting called and things like that. But what matters to us is the purpose of this SDK. Why do we need this SDK? Why can't we call the REST API by itself? The reason is that most of the time, REST APIs are slightly complicated. For example, passing the token slightly differs in different APIs. And the API can change between versions as well, but this SDK remains same. So the API developer will have a bit of wiggle room between versioning and formatting and things like that, while it can give a very simple interface to us. For example, in this case, base URL and API key. We are not worried whether the API key is passed on a GET request or POST request or something like that. And we are calling a create function and things like that. So if it is GET request, what is the argument? What is the string coming after the question mark in the NASA example? If it is POST, in the header, where do we pass the API in the header and things like that? So all those things are abstracted from us in line number 5. And if you look at the implementation, this is all open source. If you want, you can look at the implementation. You will see the REST API getting called from this particular function or subsequent functions. Probably it is saving somewhere in the memory, and this is actually calling the API. There's a good chance that that's the case, but doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it is calling the API within this framework or SDK. So we'll be using this kind of SDK, software development kit. That is the full form of SDK. So different SDKs we will be using, which calls REST API like this behind the scenes. So throughout this training, we'll be seeing different REST APIs and Python code, which calls the model, which is hosted in different cloud resources. That is what our training is going to be. So we have seen what are REST APIs and how it is used in the context of AI. So we have seen some examples, and we have seen that in the LM Studio as well. And the REST APIs are not different in cloud, and the Azure AI services we'll be using in the subsequent lessons.